My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review for The Flash. And I had zero excitement for this movie. It's been in production forever. I do not care about the DCEU, and every trailer looked atrocious to me. So, this movie just completely irrelevant to me. But it did get my curiosity a few months ago when the word of mouth surrounding it was extraordinary. There were many critics and some directors and actors and authors calling this movie one of the best superhero movies ever made. And I was just baffled. I'm like, it can't be that good, is it? And every time I saw the trailer for this movie, I'm just like, there is no way. And now that I've seen this movie, I can say, just no way. Like, come on. One of the best ever made. Just, it's all subjective, but I could not disagree more. In fact, this is a very bad movie. And there's an issue with it that was so apparent. And it's the fact that for the very first Flash movie, you're going with his biggest storyline, the Flashpoint Paradox. It's just a baffling, terrible decision. You should start small. Have him go against Captain Cold or Mirror Master, and then at the end of a trilogy, you could do this movie. I feel like we don't know enough about Barry, his life, and the people around him for this movie to have any weight. And watching it, that's what I felt. It just feels like it's missing a bunch of previous movies. There's no clear foundation. It's like if the very first MCU movie was Infinity War. That movie is reliant on your investment in these characters, in their development, and just looking at this movie as the first Flash movie, it's just a very empty experience. And the movie had a chance to tell a very emotional story about a boy who just wants to save his parents. But this storyline is completely void of any emotion because the mom's just not a factor in this movie. She's maybe in it for 3 or 4 minutes maximum. She has no presence. So the entire emotional foundation of this story is absent. And then there's something that happens to the Barry that we know. I don't want to give it away. And I'm like, okay, this is a very good direction to take his character. Let's see what they do with it. And it just feels irrelevant. It feels like something bad happened and then it gets resolved later on, and it just doesn't really factor into the story enough. I also didn't like how this entire movie story just kind of begins for the sake of it. He's just running really fast and he discovers he can go back in time. And I'm like, why couldn't he discover this power previously? It would have been great if Iris was in trouble, and because of that, he's very motivated and he's going to run faster than ever before, and then he discovers it. But that's just not the case for this movie. So it really feels like this movie could have taken place at any point. I think everything with Zod in this movie is pathetic. It is just as underwhelming as can be. And for a movie that's a time traveling movie and dealing with all these multiverses and there's just so much at stake, for a movie that should feel big and epic, it feels very small scale. The final battle takes place in this desert and it's just empty. It's just lacking any bit of tension or weight, just anything. So just so much of the story I found to be a disaster. And then we get to the cast, and Ezra Miller, like, he's given great performances in movies like The Perks of Being a Wallflower and We Need to Talk About Kevin. And I even think he's good in the very first Fantastic Beasts movie. But he always works best in a supporting role. He cannot carry a movie, let alone a movie of this size. He just doesn't have that screen presence. He doesn't have that charisma. And I just found myself very bored. And the other Barry just got on my nerves so many times. He is so painfully annoying. He does this stupid ha ha laugh time and time again, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, you're driving me nuts. Like, this is everything I feared the movie would be. Then you've got Michael Keaton, who I think is the best Batman. And the reason why I love him so much is because he comes across like this weird dude trying to come across as normal but failing. And he just does that so perfectly, and I love those Tim Burton movies, and I think he does a fine job here. He just doesn't have a lot to work with, if I'm being honest. Then you've got Sasha Calle, who I thought was terrible as Supergirl. She is so bland and boring. Michael Shannon has nothing to do. He's very boring. Ben Affleck, he's only in this movie for a little bit, but he really stands out in the short time he's in it. And Kelsey Clemens, she is not good in this movie at all. So the cast didn't really work for me really either. And then we get to the directing by Andy Muschietti, who directed Mama, a movie that I loved the first time I watched it, but then I rewatched it like 1 or 2 years ago. It does not hold up, and the movie's CGI is atrocious. He also directed the first It movie. I think that is a great movie, but it falls short of perfection because of some really bad CGI. He also directed It Chapter 2, an abysmal movie with some terrible CGI. You're noticing a pattern? Now, there is some CGI in this movie that I liked. You know, whenever Barry runs fast and, you know, it's fine. But there is some truly atrocious CGI that looked like a video game. I don't know how some shots in this movie got approved. It is truthfully baffling. Let's get into it a little bit. There is some CGI people in this movie, and I think it's unethical. I think it's very gross. They're also not in the movie for long at all. It's a very quick cameo, but man, like, they looked truly horrendous. Just terrible. So yeah, the CGI isn't great. The action is lacking. There's no scene that stands out, and I don't know. I don't want to say he did a terrible job, but he doesn't really do a good job either. And then I think we just got one issue of this movie where I'm just kind of tired of this superhero genre. Like, this is the fourth superhero movie this year. Ant-Man 3 was no, the fifth. Oh my goodness, the fifth. Ant-Man 3 was terrible. Shazam 2 was mediocre at best. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 I thought was fine, and it hasn't sat well with me. Spider-Verse, which is a perfect movie. I've seen it numerous times now. I love it. I think it is one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. But then we get to this movie, and I don't know, I'm just kind of getting tired of this kind of movie. I really am. Just all these CGI fights, I feel like I've seen it done all before. All these nostalgic bit of soundtrack or dialogue, I feel like I've seen that before. Like, there's a scene where it's Supergirl's fighting Zod, and then Batman flies past her in the Batwing, and his music is playing. And as someone who loves the Justice League, as someone who loves Batman, I should have been out of my mind for this moment, but I just felt nothing. So yes, I got lots of issues with this movie, but I do got some good things to say about it. First of all, I love the design of the Speed Force. I thought it looked great. I know I complained about the CGI, but this was the most creative, stunning element of this movie. Well, like, there's so much that you see, but like, so much of the outer world looks like cardboard. It looks very two-dimensional, while Barry, who's traveling through time, looks three-dimensional. And I just feel like that really worked for me. Some humor in this movie falls flat, but there is some funny moments. I did laugh maybe a couple of times. There's one really goofy moment at the start of this movie involving some babies, and I actually thought it was really fun. Not the best CGI, but fun nonetheless. And there's a section, I don't even want to say a section. There is something that this movie does in the last act, and I'm like, okay, I'm loving the direction this movie is taking. And I was getting really into it, only for it to be ruined by the most abysmal aspects of this movie. But then we got back to the good stuff, and I was getting amped up, like, what's going to happen next? And then the movie kind of just ends. It just deflated like that, and I don't know, I feel like I was robbed of some sort of a climax. Like, really? That's the big epic finale we're going with? It was getting great. It was really going into some dark territory, and I was starting to love it, and then it's done. So that was frustrating. So yeah, I didn't like this movie. I don't hate it either. I think it's just a bad, forgettable movie. Ezra Miller cannot carry a movie. He's very annoying here, and the rest of the cast doesn't have enough to do. The emotional foundation completely falls flat. I think it was a terrible idea to have this movie to be the first Flash movie. I thought some of the visual effects look hideous. There's some really unethical cameos here that I hated, and it's just a big nothing of a movie. It's got moments where you see potential, and I like the ideas it's going for, but at the end of the day, just go see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So I'll give this movie, The Flash, a 4 out of 10. Okay, I've seen Spider-Man 3 times now, and I'll probably go at least one more time, maybe 2 more times. I just love the movie. I am now confident in saying that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is a top 3 superhero movie ever made. I just love it. But, The Flash, what did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, stay tuned for more videos soon, and Gavin, out.